Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So here we are for the last of the series. Today we're going to have some fun. I'm going to get to analyze you guys a little bit, so this should be entertaining. You'll analyze each other. So we're going to talk about projectives today. We'll talk about some drawings. We'll talk about some incomplete sentences and storytelling type of activities. And I'll kind of cover some of the stuff that I use, but I try to keep it more to an informal utilization, stuff you can use in session, just kind of exploration, talking points, things like that. So we're not going to go through like any formal scoring or things like that, because that would be a whole 4 weeks on its own. So we'll just talk about informal type of stuff. So we're going to start with some activities. So I need you to find a partner. Okay. And then are we even or are we not?
Two, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, and one group of 3, I guess. We're trying to work around that. One group of 3.
She warned us we were going to get tested.
Okay. And so that as you notice, there is paper in front of you, there's markers, colored pencils, crayons, and so with your partner, we're going to do a drawing first, okay? And so you're going to choose first who's going to draw first. One person will draw at a time. One per person. So kind of decide who's going to want to draw first. Okay. And so the person who is not drawing, who will be observing, come get one of these papers and do not let your partner see what is on here. These are kind of your instructions on what to do.
Okay. So who's drawing? You're drawing first. We got little ones.
Okay. And then what the drawer is going to be doing is, right here, is, okay, so let your partner see that person drawing. I want you to draw a picture of a family doing something. It can be your family, it can be someone else's family, it can be what a made-up family. No, sorry?
Draw a picture of a family.
A family doing something, okay? And then when you're done, I just want you to tell your partner about the picture. Okay? And so the other person observing, kind of read that sheet, know what you're supposed to be doing, and then let's go.
First of all, I failed art.
I know. And you can talk, this doesn't have to be a quiet activity.
We should do a Pictionary where I should be guessing what he's drawing.
I already know what you're drawing.
This is just sort of the outline. This is
It's up to you.
I'm a really bad drawer, apparently.
My stick, no, they're swimming. Or face down.
It's a part that doesn't make any sense. What do you think? It's going to pull my barbecue league? It's supposed to be a pool, but then I forgot.
no doubt figuring out what we're doing.
About to sit for a meal.
There you go.
Looks like.
Yep, this is the favorite pastime of the family, eating.
Good.
I haven't decided.
We'll make this. This is okay.
Dad's kids.
Okay. I see. Okay.
Combined naturally.
Oh.
So they're swimming. They're also in the No.
Okay, well, tell me about your picture. They're at Disney. Tell me about your picture.
Wishing they had.
They're swimming. Yeah, and when you're done, you can have the person describe who's in the picture and just describe it, what they're doing.
Yes.
Okay.
I told you this is my favorite.
Yes.
Okay. Is a family.
Four kids. We always try.
That's the lake, which is
together.
You're going to be very
It's kind of my
okay.
You got the main character.
short
Yes,
ones.
because in
Weights are
this,
smaller
Mommy's
than
doing
yours.
her job, and then she's the only one.
Like
She's
your,
the first
like,
one there, that's gonna get
you
rounded out.
have 6 plates, which have 4 that you pull your food from.
We actually, usually catch it with the beer, we give the food
I
directly
didn't
from the plant, so which is good. This might just be fruit. Accessories, we don't use certain.
That's my story.
You guys done?
Matter of fact.
And then when you're done, let me just get your attention for a second, and when you guys are done, then I want, just make sure the person who can see that, and then the next person, you're gonna switch, so the other person who just drew is gonna be observing, come get the second sheet, and the other person will do the same thing, draw a family doing sheet, and these are the instructions for the second observer. And you guys hang on to your,
approach the activity.
They've never seen it before, then they just part it, they got the car and use that.
So how did you arrive at drawing Disney?
They're almost like taking back.
Yeah. Should we switch?
Should have had it.
So now we're switching, and now her and I are gonna do this.
I know, I'm like,
Then you have to judge and critique her artistic work on.
So now, Michelle's
need
gonna
a
draw
second,
her.
so now I have to draw. Yeah, because you're observing.
But I can't share.
Okay, for you.
and then we just get rolling.
Yep, and just go ahead and do the same. No, I'm not ready yet.
We're not supposed to process it?
No, he just told you about it. Did he tell you about it?
So
Yeah, you're good.
water.
Then switch.
Search it.
So who's observing? No.
Yes, she's very mean if you disturb her.
These questions are a little bit mind-blowing.
It's different, like the different questions. Yes, because otherwise the first, second person would be able to decide which I do that.
And now I'm thinking, I've done it this way, done it that way.
And Loomis didn't tell us where we were going, and we were supposed to know where we were going.
Well, they told us we were going to the library, but you just didn't know where the library was.
It was very.
So, tell me about it.
And then, yep, and then describe, second person will also describe their drawing to the partner.
Up until the TV with legs, I thought you were at the beach.
That's a draw.
Good.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to draw that one.
That's what?
They do grow.
Oh. Everybody's hoping for word.
Styled out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's over. You're at the beach.
Yes, we were at the beach. That's my dog. That's Jack and I playing. It's Christy Lane over here. That's her folks coming over because they're always there.
You get along with your.
Oh yeah, just fine. Just fine. We just see them a little more than I prefer.
I see.
And Jack hasn't been old enough to go to the beach yet, but this year he is, so we're gonna do some beach stuff.
When you used to it, when I was your age, my in-laws too, they wouldn't let me go.
Very traditional, you do that every night.
Yeah, they live in just New Zealand. It's one of well, it's for years. It's funny to see that, you know, it's randomly showed up. I did.
Yeah,
No, they're not.
reports here in
So why are the people realize that
Mom
this
demographic.
get colored in?
Yeah, I didn't think there's good options. I just read someone from CI. Red, brown, so gone.
Yes, because you get up there. Well, that's why it's good.
Only had
Is that usually the way it is? Favorite Jack and
she hangs out with mom, her dad and I, we'll do stuff, and then Jack and Christy will go to Christy. It's, you're just, it's 50 on that, and the pool, I'm sure he was okay.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone jumps.
We started at,
Well, I thought you were fixing it.
we started
Can
at,
you make sure it is?
no, I mean, you're closer to your son. Yeah, so.
They're enjoying their time together.
I think that was
Abby, she shreds the water.
Is this,
Oh,
That's what makes sense. I never got it. I think it's
Why? Okay, let's take 1 more minute to finish out, so finish describing, and then we're gonna go on to the next. Okay, are we done? So we're gonna come back to that a little bit later.
Equal like in every.
So still in your partner, your triad, we're gonna do an activity. You're gonna need 1 sheet of paper. Okay. Everyone with paper? No laugh. We need a bell. Next shot. Okay, so the next activity, okay, there's a picture up here. I'm gonna want you with your partner to come up with a story. Okay, so you guys are gonna come up with a story about this picture. Okay? Want you to write down kind of the gist, tell me what's happening in the picture, what led up to the scene, what each person is feeling and doing, and then give me some kind of resolution. How does it end? Use your imagination, there's no right or wrong answers. Okay? And then you can just, on a piece of paper, just jot down the main points. You don't have to go into this whole elaborate thing, but if anyone wants a closer picture, it's here.
It's a ghost.
With your partner, with your partner. We're doing this, you guys are doing it together.
What do you think is?
Anyone want to see it closer?
I was thinking, oh, if the family started down in the corner, like maybe having pasta or something, and like they have a servant. But it could be mom, like you said, like, or whoever made the meal, saying, like, waiting to see kind of how they.
Dr. Whittakin's analyzing.
He's analyzing who's wrong, who's
He's analyzing the analyzer.
We can't be the ones doing the thematic acquisition stuff. Like, it happens, we have meetings. So what do you think happened?
I thought he. Some other
probably getting ready.
Yes, they're patiently waiting.
I was stuck analyzing like.
They put one of the right
I was stuck on
side.
analyzing.
What do you think they're saying to each other?
Up to this part.
Unless we have a really odd perspective.
And then how do we make them started?
Yeah, I wonder about the one on the right, because they don't have a lid on it.
Maybe they're older.
Is that the oldest or super clean?
How it ends? Whatever we want.
Tablecloth and
Right, right.
Right. Now that one will.
Like together. Yeah. So everybody collectively cleans up.
I don't know why they
From your lens.
I didn't put deodorant on.
Yeah, I also think they're like sharing about their day.
Like 2 boys and a girl, you guys?
Well, it's interesting that they're.
There's my, there's my lens.
Yeah.
We're not. We're just moving. For anybody who wants to volunteer,
So could we, for me, that's why I felt to see like distance, that's why it was not clear, so that's why they were coming up with
Makes my job
shot
easier.
house from work or whatever.
No, picture
But
old,
observing is.
There we go.
Just, you know, with the servingware they're using and the tablecloth, looks like a bunny cake.
You guys having fun?
Yes.
Can imagine my whole meditation. I would be concerned. I would be concerned. It's always a bad thing to come out. We're gonna see a lot of age at the
I only used to be family 5 with dad. They don't do as many.
Okay.
Yeah.
keep going and then once you get almost.
Okay, let's take a couple more seconds just to finish this one up. You guys have an ending to your story?
There's the answer there.
The fun ones in the TAT, those are play cards, you go. They look at you like. That really freaks them out when you go, let me see here. Okay, are we about done with this one? We have just one more activity we're gonna do before we get into actually talking about this stuff. And so the next is you're gonna get a little sheet of paper with some what we call stems. And I just want you to complete the sentence. First thing that comes to mind, there's no right or wrong, just go ahead and write down what corresponds for you to complete that sentence. Okay? Individual, yeah, this one's individual. And then you're gonna give those back to me once you're done.
Yeah, she said.
Yeah. So don't write your name on it.
Yes, don't write your name on it, it's the other one.
Yes, she's the wager. She's gonna wipe her out.
No, those will just come to me, so don't write your name on it. Those will just pass up to me once you're done. Right.
I'm using it lightly.
Take one, yes. language is finishing the sentences.
Yep. First thing that comes to mind. Most people won't do that, but try.
Yeah, I know, and I
We all will.
can't.
We all.
It's probably, it's pretty
Yes. So should I just pass it on forward or bring it up to me or all?
First one's not. Wait, are you collecting paper?
I don't know anyone's handwriting, so.
Okay, so I.
Good, John, we both write that, so we'll both think it was a doctor. So, it really narrows down the field of who they can guess it from.
On top of which they can't read it, so they can't.
Can't analyze that. So was that intentional, doctor? Huh?
I'm only 2 years old. I can go with that.
I'm gonna hand it down.
No more than just Kentucky.
Anonymously
Yes.
analyze.
And I don't know your handwriting, we don't really see your handwriting.
Nice road
We're gonna be gone for the money.
You know, also, we definitely
Yeah, I'll be
take
back
it
Friday.
because
Yeah, that'd be pretty easy.
Oh, that's awesome.
See if I can just a little bit on board. I think part of what's happening with them now is maybe her responding to their change, maybe.
That's along the way, you're gonna see an old friend which is close to
Is that everyone?
It's Casey County,
Do I have everyone's?
south of Lexington, about an hour.
Okay. So I know you guys are probably super anxious to be like, wow, what are we gonna do with all this? But you're gonna have to wait, okay? We're gonna talk a little bit about projectives first, and then we'll, as we go through the different topics, we'll kind of come back to the activities you did. And there's a reason that I had you guys do that first, right? Because if I show you guys all my tricks and secrets, what I'm looking for, all that stuff, it's probably gonna change your answers, right? So that's why we did it first, okay? So we're gonna talk a little bit about projectives. And so the theory, I've kind of mentioned this before in other discussions, more in terms of the psychodynamic, psychoanalysis type of fields. So the theory behind projections is that people will have the tendency when they see an ambiguous stimulus, right, be it a picture, be it a sentence, be it just kind of an ink blot, they're gonna project their own stuff onto what it is that they see, right? So by looking at how they see that image, whatever it is, or how they complete it, will kind of give you a little bit of a window or insight into how they're functioning, kind of where they're at. So originally the focus was on uncovering unconscious drives, but now it's more interest in the structure of the theme. So it's not just what they say, how the story's told, what they see, it's also about the process, okay, how they're seeing it, how they're describing it. And then also, we still look at the symbolic content a little bit, so also still paying attention to what was told, what was seen, those kind of things. And so the hope is the person will project their feeling, their fears, hopes, desires, repressed wishes, all that kind of stuff, okay? So it's not just looking at, you know, your personality or what is it that you're afraid of, or do you have issues with your mother or things like that. It's not about that, okay? It can look at all of these other issues or other things going on. And part of the important thing with that is we'll talk about is the conversation that you have with a person about what it is that they see, what they say, things like that. Okay, so it's the process and the content. And so it's just based on the tenet of psychoanalysis that we're kind of unaware of what drives our behavior. You know, as we're going throughout our day, we're not thinking always intentionally about why we're doing the things we're doing. We're not always really aware of that. And so we're trying to get at that through some of these measures and through some of these processes. So, you know, behaviors, about 10% is what we see, but most of the underlying stuff we're not really aware of, not really cognizant of. And based on, you know, Freud's iceberg theory, which I mentioned before. Questions on the theory? It's kind of just a snapshot. Okay. So how does it work? So we we start with an ambiguous or incomplete stimuli or direction, right? So with you guys, had you draw a picture of a family, okay? Had you complete some sentences, and also had you tell a story, okay? So it can be different kind of formats. And then with the images, can be like the Rorschach is kind of one of the most common ones, one of the most known, one of the most feared, most stereotypical type of things, right? And then with the Rorschach, the thing that's a little bit different is that we actually go back after we administer, you know, you say what you see, but then we have you describe, well, how did you see that? Because we're trying to understand what about that picture made you see what you see. Is it the form? Is it the color? What are you seeing with that? With the story that you guys practice, you know, there's a story with a beginning, middle, and end. Tell me what has led up to the scene, what's going on, what the characters are feeling and doing, and then give some kind of resolution. Okay, we'll kind of talk about what's the purpose of that one, why did we do that? And then when we go back and analyze, kind of depends on how the task is utilized as well as what the purpose is. So there's a little bit of different nuances in how we'll actually look at it between assessment versus if you're using it kind of in session and therapy. So we'll talk a little bit about those subtle differences. And the analysis is really the way I look at it, it's the process and content. So I did see that some of you guys with the first activity with the drawing, you guys did share your little cards of what we were looking at. So the first observer, I think, was looking at process. So it was more of watching how the person engaged in the activity. You know, how did they go about doing it? How were they feeling to them? Were they anxious? Were they nervous? Were they proud? Okay, and the second person was more looking at the content, so looking at the actual drawing and issues relating to that. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. Okay, so kind of what I just described. So the process is the how, right? What was the approach? How did they go about choosing materials, right? You guys had different options. You had markers, you had crayons, you had pencils, okay? Was there any hesitation? People just pick something up and go for it, okay? Looking at subtleties of the image, the size, the distance, the pressure, right? Was there any figure that was a little bit darker than others? Okay, was it just really light and kind of hard to really see? Any underlying themes or patterns? And then you can also look at how they work with the materials. You know, especially with kids, if you give them certain crayons, are they breaking your crayons and colored pencils because you're using so much pressure? Is it just kind of chaotic and all over the place? Or are they kind of just so light that you can't even really tell what it is that they're doing? Okay. So it's the how. And then how do they interact with you? Do they just zone in and kind of ignore you? You're not even there? Okay, did your partner just talk to you, or were they just focused, hyper-focused on the drawing? Okay, or did they tell you about it as they were going through it? Or were they kind of asking for your reassurance? How does that like, okay, what about that? Oh, this is terrible. Okay, so kind of that, what's their experience like doing that type of activity with someone watching? And then again, content, the what, the elements of the drawing or the story, you know, with a family, who was included, who was not, what were they doing, kind of those type of things, okay? So let's talk a little bit more about the activity. So the family drawing activity, okay? So on the sheet, the first person was instructed to look at the process, okay? Looking at what materials did the other person use, how did he use the materials, the approach, and all that kind of stuff. So what did you guys notice? What did you guys notice? Anything that stuck out to your mind?